Welcome to another episode of The Second Coming. I'm here with Brother T. I'm your host, Jason Keaton. Brother T, how's it going?
Hey, good morning, Jason. Good to see you, my brother. Doing well, going pretty well. No complaints here, for sure.
Great. Well, Brother T, you want to breathe us in for a moment, and then I'll jump right into the questions.
Okay, hey, let's do that. Let's just jump in. Let's take a good deep breath and turn within for just a brief moment. Indeed, we are blessed. We are really blessed. I am so grateful to be here in the company of our guides and our masters, our teachers, our family, and my brother Jason, and our audience today. We want to say we are so grateful, all of us, for this opportunity where two or more are gathered in the name of Jesus, in the name of Christ, as Christ, in perfect safety. We're very, very excited to be continuing this conversation and learning through this process on a journey of awakening. It will be so. Behold, we make all things new, and so it is.
And so it is. So, Brother T, today I want to get kind of personal and kind of in your soul. I'm not going to say I want to get in your head or in your mind, because that's all ego, but I want to get in your soul a little bit. And I want to hear what you feel is, we talk about the second coming, and we talk about this spiritual existence we have. What do you feel is the biggest obstacle in this awakening? Maybe the biggest spiritual challenge, I should say.
That's a good question. That's a great question. So we'll say, what is our biggest spiritual challenge in the process of awakening? The biggest spiritual challenge that we have is our own perception of what it's supposed to be. The default operating system that we call the ego, that we're born into when we come into this incarnation here, and it serves its purpose. It helps us to adjust to living in form. It helps us to survive in form. It helps us to feed the body, take care of the body. It operates, well, as we are beginning to accustom ourselves, if you will, to surviving, living here in physical form. But what's incarnating is our soul, and we've talked about that a little bit, right? And the soul has its own agenda, and it is fulfilling its agenda. And the ego construct, the thinking mind that we think ourselves to be, which we call the personality self, if you will, it really has no capacity. The ego has no capacity to be in communication and to understand the soul. Okay, the best example of that I can provide is one that I use often, and it is when you go to sleep at night, there you are, and you believe yourself to be in another dimension, even though you don't realize it's another dimension. The sleeping self is a small sliver of your consciousness, but you continue to live. You don't stop living. When you go to sleep, you don't go into blackness and darkness. You continue to live, and you're completely unaware that your awakened self, what we call this I've started calling this the sleepwalking self. The ego mind is really kind of the sleepwalking self, if you will. And it's the sleeping self at night is completely unaware that you're safe and home in bed. Your body is safe and home in bed. And it's also unaware of this sleepwalking self during our daily life, if you will. And so that egoic mind, it's kind of like the separation between the sleeping self and the sleepwalking self, the daily self. That separation between those two ideas of self are what's going on between this sleepwalking self, if you will, the ego construct, and the soul. So the ego cannot understand and does not know the soul, right? It's just doing the best it can based on its past experiences and its conditioning to live your life, you living your life as an ego. That's basically it. So the biggest obstacle to our journey, our spiritual journey, is that ego self is a control freak. I mean, it wants to be in control of every moment of your experience. Think about that now. It not only wants to control what you're doing, what you're experiencing, it also wants to control what other people are doing that have an impact on your experience, right? But the soul is patient. The soul is accepting. The soul is allowing all things to be as they're expressing, because unbeknownst to the construct of the egoic self, this is all God, right? All of this is God. Everything is a part of God, Everything that you're experiencing is of God. Even the ego itself is of God, because it is a temporary operating system for us, an artificial intelligence, I like to call it, for us to assimilate into the world of form. So there are a couple of things that come to mind as you ask the question, and I'm just sharing with you, a thought stream here, Jason. But what most of us, I'll speak for myself, what I experienced as the biggest obstacle to my spiritual journey was my own thought system, my ego, my personality, the self I thought I was. And that self wanted to maintain control. So for the first 50, 60% of my life, it wanted to, there's an aspect of that self I call the skeptic. That skeptic self said, you don't need to go to church. You don't need to have anything to do with that. You don't need to know. You just need to make money. You just need to learn how to survive. You need to have a good relationship with a wife or a friends, and relationship with family, and have a good place to live, and you can control your life if you'll just operate in the world successfully. And so that control system of my egoic mind kept me very busy, Jason, for the first 40 plus years of my life, before I finally stumbled upon this pathway that we call a spiritual journey. I didn't really know anything about it. I just set it aside from the time I was about 15 years old on. I just ignored it completely. So that's the biggest obstacle, is that most of us are not even conscious that a spiritual journey is available. So that's number one. But once we start on the pathway, once we actually our soul catches our attention or brings us into some experience that wakes us up and starts to help us to tell the ego, all right, wait a minute. I don't care about the skeptic. Wait a minute. I know that you're worried or you're concerned, but I'm just not going to listen to that right now. I want to read this book, or I want to talk to this person, or I want to watch this movie, or I want to watch this video. I want to find out more about this whole thing called spiritual journey. And the ego has to acquiesce to that, because the Christ child that you are is the consciousness. You are the consciousness that the egoic thought system is taking advantage of by holding your attention and keeping you hypnotized, so to speak, and giving it all of your attention. I didn't know those things for the first 4 decades of my life. So once I discovered that there was another thought system, that there was another way of being, that there's another pathway that was completely, I was completely oblivious to, then it took me a while to begin to unlearn the conditioning of the world. And part of that conditioning, I don't like sharing it, but I think it's important that we realize it, Jason, is that most of us are conditioned with a religious background that is very confining. And it's built, that whole thought system, that religious thought system, is built on fear of God, fear of love, fear of your neighbor. And the whole thought system is based on separation, that we're separate. God's out there, we're over here, et cetera, et cetera. So moving beyond that conditioned belief system that the ego has about spirituality, about God, and about our life is a pretty big obstacle. That's why we need people to help us. That's why Jesus has been such a tremendous asset for me, because he's been able to help me through his recent writings and his recent communications to us since the 1960s. So that's like only 50 years or so. Since then, a lot of information has become available to us, Jason, and now I have been able to progress on my own spiritual journey. But the biggest obstacle, number one, is we don't know about it. It's not taught in our schools. And the correct spiritual pathway is is avoided in the traditional theology, if you will. Christianity is putting up lots of obstacles, of fear, blasphemy and all that stuff about a judgmental, vicious, wrathful, vicious, suspicious God. And so once we begin to learn about what God really is, instead of God made up in our own image, we can let go of our fear of all those things, and letting go of those fears opens our mind up, and we're willing to receive more truth. But the truth is true, and only the truth is true. And Jesus tells us in A Course in Miracles, Jason, that only you can decide when you take the curriculum, but it's not optional. You have to take the curriculum. You will enjoy the benefit of the curriculum at some point, but you do decide for yourself. By letting your ego run your life, you decide the obstacles that are present for you that are helping you to unrealize, the presence of love in your life.
I love that.
I'll leave it at that. What's come up for you from that discussion?
Yeah. Couple things, but the first one that Kit, that you just mentioned is you decide, for myself, in fact, I decide that I'm on this journey. I'm on this journey, spiritual journey, we'll call it. And I read certain books and it tells me that I need to be seeking the path of enlightenment. I read other books and it says I need to do nothing, just observe myself. It gets confusing on how active I'm supposed to be on this spiritual journey. I know I understand from your teachings, from the teachings of masters, being present is a key. But what does this when I'm doing, when I'm actively doing, when I'm on this journey, is the journey observation or is the journey seeking enlightenment?
That's a great question. So who is the I that's on the journey? How many eyes are there?
Yeah, there's two, I guess. There's the capital I, the capital self, and then there's the small ego. And
wonderful. So if you know that, just saying that is really, that's a huge paradigm shift for us, right? To begin to realize that there's more to me than I see. The ego wants us to believe that this is all that there is. I'm a body and I'm my thought system and this is me and I'm separate. That is a huge that is a huge limitation on our capacity to know ourselves. So the very first obstacle is if I can begin to know myself, my true self, who am I? Is a question that the ego doesn't even want us to ask, right? But you've asked it, I've asked it, it comes, right? And so if we can then begin to understand that, wait a minute, the ego wants to be in control and it wants to control my spiritual journey. So it's trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do and what am I not supposed to do? And what I do nowadays, okay, is when those things come up, I simply say, shut up. I'm not listening to those questions. I don't need to do anything. The ego can't do anything except keep me distracted. Right. So what can I do? What have I learned? One of the first things that any of us will learn, and Jesus teaches us in A Course in Miracles, is to quieten the mind. In other words, sit down, unplug from the world so that the five senses aren't demanding your attention, and turn within. So for me, I literally put in earplugs. I like to totally block out as much sound as I can. I like to be in a space where there's no light, no bright light, certainly, no noises around me, and no bright lights or anything. And I try to get in a comfortable position for my body so it's not demanding my attention. And I just settle in and be quiet. People say, well, my mind runs away and I got all these. That's fine. Watch your thoughts. Notice your thoughts. Notice your breath. There are lots of practices that I know are available to all of us out there. If you start practicing or trying to learn more about meditation, And even that can become a big distraction because so many people are gurus and experts on meditation, right? But really, it's all about just being quiet. And that's where Jesus' admonition in A Course in Miracles is to, just relax. You need do nothing. And he's referring to the ego here. The ego needs to do nothing because the truth is your true self, your soul, knows exactly what to do and what it's doing. And it's doing that not in opposition to the ego, but certainly not in collaboration with the ego. Okay? It has its own agenda. That's why it came here in this incarnation to be more of God, right? Eventually for us to be the expression of God in form. Like Jesus, when he said, when you see me, you see the Father. He was saying, I'm more of God. I'm being God, and I am the expression of God in form. I am the voice for God. And all that's true, but that's your soul. So the ego, as much as wonderful as it is, and so much value that it provides us, it's a poor servant. So anytime you start thinking, I have to do something, or I need to do something, just set those thoughts aside. Don't let those thoughts distract you. All you need to do is make a little time in your day. Great time to do that is when you first wake up. Get a big tall glass of fresh water, hydrate your body, and find a little place to sit down and shut up. and just listen to not listen, if you will, but to be aware and present to the present moment, okay? And watch your thoughts. It's just settling down and being quiet, tuning out the world. And if you can do that for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes in the morning, or half an hour, wow, that's fantastic. And you know what? If you can do it in the evening too, before you go to bed, that's another great time to do that. So it really is simple. The ego wants to make it as complicated and as hard as possible. But Spirit wants you to know that you need do nothing. It's easy. Your soul has a process, and you're going to live through it. The ego's going to survive it. It's going to be okay. But ultimately, the soul will begin to be what you rely on to inform your daily life and to help guide you as you continue to evolve in your spiritual journey.
I love that. I love that, Brother T. And I think just naturally, as we quiet the mind, we quiet the ego, it allows our soul to show through. And you naturally become an expression of Christ. And people see that. People feel your energy when you walk into a room. People feel your joy. People want to be around you because they crave that energy, even when they don't understand what it is. It's truly amazing. So thank you, Brother T, for sharing that. And just one quick addition and another question. You talked briefly about the limitations and restrictions of the dogma religions that are out there. And I see that firsthand with my mother, especially. If she listens to this podcast, she feels that she's sinning. She feels like she fears God. She fears that she is sinning because she's asking a question, who am I? And to those of us on this path, then it just seems so clear. It's like, it seems so fear-based. I just wanted to just reiterate what you always say, Brother T. God is love. And
absolutely. And what was Jesus's primary admonition to us? Be only love.
Right.
Did he say be fearful of God? No, never.
Right.
That was a man-made construct.
Right.
Even his disciples were filled with fear at the time of the crucifixion. They didn't really understand, and he attempted to help them understand the crucifixion, but they didn't. And the churches that were built after that were all built around a fear. And it starts out that Jesus was punished for your sins. Yeah, right. You weren't even born yet, so how did that happen? Oh, because you're born in sin. Oh, see, all of this is a construct of the ego, which its whole foundation is guilt and blame. So if we're looking to the constructs of the egoic mind to help us find God, we will be distracted for some time. Now, I could probably suggest that maybe I've had a few hundred lifetimes, Jason, and I think it's very likely that in most, if not all of those lifetimes, I had very little spiritual advancement, very little. But you know what? It's okay. I've had more in this lifetime for sure. And you don't go backwards. Once you begin to evolve, when you reincarnate, you come right back where you were and you continue to evolve. So for your Blessed Mother and my Blessed Mother, you know, my mother in her last year or so was beginning to be willing to listen to my conversation a little bit, you know, because I've been studying A Course in Miracles now for, you know, going on 20 years. But I've been on a spiritual pathway for almost 30 years. It's hard for me to even imagine that. It's been that long. So it takes time. And every incarnation is precious. And let's look at it this way. Even in this lifetime, your mother is actually being introduced to more truth by you, her son. Right? So you may have chosen to incarnate with your mother as your mother because it was an opportunity for both of you to advance spiritually. And your journey of spirituality has helped many people. But we're not here to help other people. We're here to wake up, to be only love. What do we need to do? Absolutely nothing. Be only love. Allow, accept, and forgive what anybody and everybody thinks where they are on their spiritual journey is exactly where their soul would have them be. Nothing needs to be fixed, and no one needs to be fixed. Everybody's okay.
Beautifully said, Brother T. And I'm going to leave it at that because it would be hard for anybody, the most judgmental person, if you say you just need to choose love, for them to disagree, because that's the foundation of everything. So,
right.
Brother
T. I have a friend that I had known for a little while, you know, in sports. And I play volleyball, and some people show up in my life around that. But anyway, he visited with me. He wanted to talk to me separately because somebody else had told him, you know, that I was a minister, that I do spiritual work. And so he wanted to talk with me privately because he wanted me to know that I probably wouldn't like him very much. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? He's like, well, I'm an atheist. I said, oh. And so he wanted to make his case, and it was all based on science and the evolution of science that we've all been subjected to over the history of the world, the belief system of the world. And anyway, I told him, I said, well, I'm not here to convince you of anything, but I will tell you what I've learned, that God is only love. I said, so let me ask you, I said, do you believe in love? I mean, have you ever been in love? You know, do you believe that love is real? He said, well, yeah, I believe that love is real. I said, you've loved somebody? He said, oh, well, yeah, I love people. I said, well, then you know God, because God is just love. It's not a person. It's not a personality. It's not some guy with a beard sitting on a cloud somewhere. God is the energy that's activated in form through love. It's called love. So if you know love, if you believe in love, then you really do believe in God, and left it there. And we've never had another discussion, but we're great friends.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to go down the road. He's curious, but that's okay. I'm not here to be a guru or any of that. I'm just sharing with you, Jason, and those that are part of True Thought, what has blessed me in my spiritual journey. But I also know that I'm joined with Spirit, and I want to say thank you to my soul, and I want to say thank you to Jesus, and I want to say thank you to the Holy Spirit and to God for the conversation we've had today, because it's not about me, and it's not really me. If I left my ego up to this, I wouldn't be doing this at all. I've made space in my life to allow my soul to be a bigger part of my life and to inform my daily choices. And I'm just sharing that with you, Jason. And I am so honored and blessed that you're willing to ask these questions and spend time in this conversation with me. God bless you, brother.
Oh, and God bless you, Brother T. Uh, this time spent together and sharing our message with the world is, it feels exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So thank you, Brother T, for your enlightenment today. Thank you, all of you viewers, for joining in. We appreciate you so much. The community that we're growing is beautiful, and it couldn't be happening without you. So thank you. And Brother T, any closing statements?
Be only love. That's the message for today. Go out and bless your brothers and sisters. Allow, accept, forgive, and be only love. And so it is. Behold, we make all things new. We are the agents of change.
Well, I'll leave it at that. And we love you. See you next week on The Second Coming.
Indeed.